Yes, good evening, Madam President. And I rise tonight with deep concern, very deep concern, and frankly disappointment over the way the majority is pushing through this emergency certified omnibus legislation. There is a lot of good things, perhaps, in this bill, but it's the way in which it's being pushed that is causing my concern. And I want to be clear, for people watching or the average person at home or really anybody, the emergency certification, there is no emergency in what a normal person would consider an emergency. There is no crisis, and there's been no public hearings this year to give citizens a voice on many of the provisions that are included in this omnibus bill. But what we do have today is, I believe it's the year anniversary of the last big earmark bill that we passed. And we received this bill last night at 10:20, none of which addresses any of Connecticut's true issue, which is an affordability crisis, which we are now starting to hear from the majority party. And moreover, the majority party just voted down all these amendments that could help actually impact the true affordability crisis that we're having here in the state of Connecticut. And that is an emergency to many who believe in emergencies around the state of Connecticut. And now here we are being asked to rubber stamp a sweeping bill that lumps together provisions, some which passed out of chambers last year, some stalled, and others that have never been thoroughly examined under the light of public scrutiny. That is not how democracy is supposed to work. That's not transparency, that's not accountability, and that is not respect for the people that we are supposed to be representing in this chamber. Emergency certifications should be reserved for emergencies. Financial emergencies, natural disasters, public safety emergencies, urgent fiscal crises. It was never intended, or should never be intended, to be used as a political tactic to revive failed legislation and to avoid public input. But today, in my opinion, it's being used for exactly that purpose. This is about control. This is about convenience. And this is about sending a clear message to the people of Connecticut. We don't need you. We don't want to hear your input. We've already decided we know better. And that is offensive. The legislation and the legislative process should not be a technicality. It's the foundation of representative government. And you can tell I'm very passionate about this. I thought about this all last night. Public hearings are not supposed to be obstacles. They're the voice of our constituents. Debate should not be a nuisance. It's our duty. When it comes and things are discarded, when those things are discarded, the process becomes nothing more than a mockery, which is what we're seeing here today. And I cannot stand here today without thinking about the history of our state and our nation when we're coming up on our 250th anniversary. My forefathers came to this country, to this state, to free themselves from a distant motherland that did not listen to its citizens, from a king who did not represent them or their beliefs. They signed all the founding incorporation documents of this country and this great nation. And they lived with bounties on their heads for the rest of their lives and died poor. They sacrificed everything they had so the future generations could govern themselves, not to be governed without a voice, which is what is happening here today. A government of the people is what they strived for. Connecticut, at one time, was a self-ruled colony built on the principle that power flows from the people upwards, not from the ruling class or the majority party downwards. So what we have now is we have, centuries later, a government that claims to represent its citizens, but that operates in a way that shuts down their voices. My forefathers did not fight to escape one unresponsive power structure only to see a modern version take shape right before our eyes under one-party rule in this chamber. And let's be honest, let's be honest. When you have a veto-proof majority in this chamber that chooses to bypass hearings, stifle debate, move massive legislation under emergency authority when no emergency exists, there can only come to one reasonable conclusion, and that is that the process is deliberately, willfully, and fully being usurped. To what? To avoid accountability and to avoid transparency. It tells seniors and workers and families and citizens and people just moving here, your input no longer matters to this chamber, to this state. Just pay up, shut up, and get out of the way, because we know better. It tells them that decisions will be made behind closed doors, legislation will be written without input, and presented as a done deal, like it has been done today. This is not leadership. This is true and utter arrogance. And what makes this especially troubling is the hypocrisy. We hear constant rhetoric about threats to democracy, about norms, about process, about respect for institutions. Yet here in this chamber, those same principles are being completely disregarded. I have heard the words outside today, unprecedented, around the halls. Unprecedented way to conduct business, an unprecedented way to spend taxpayer dollars, and an unprecedented way to pass legislation behind the public's back. What could happen from this? We'll have to come back and fix things that are missed because we had no public input. Unfunded mandates, things that could have been taken care of if we had an opportunity to have the public weigh in. What's happening now is power is being consolidated, safeguards are being bypassed, public voices are being silenced under the guise of emergency certification. Government is clearly wielding power over people, and it is not working with them. You cannot defend democracy in speeches and then undermine it in your practices. You cannot lecture the public about transparency while you operate in the darkness. And you cannot claim to stand with people while shutting them out of the process. The people of Connecticut deserve better. They deserve hearings. They deserve open and honest debate. They deserve time to understand what is being proposed. And they deserve a government that respects them, not one that rushes past them. We are elected to serve, not to dictate. We are here to listen, not to dismiss. And we are entrusted with power, not to abuse it. This bill is going to pass today. You have the numbers. The majority does. But I will say that power does not equal permission, and the passage today does not equal legitimacy. History reminds us that when governments stop listening to people, history reminds us that governments that stop listening eventually lose the trust of those who they govern. Because if we lose that, we lose something far more important than any vote today. If we lose the trust of the citizens that we serve, once it's gone, it's nearly impossible to get back. And I urge rejection of this bill today. Thank you, Madam President.